Here are some of the main things to know about impeachment. Point one, the term actually refers only to the filing of formal charges. So if the House impeaches, the Senate holds a trial on those charges to decide whether the president should be removed from office. And if it does vote to do that, it can hold a separate vote on whether to bar that person from ever holding any federal office in the future. Point two, no president has ever been removed from office this way. Two presidents, Andrew Johnson and Bill Clinton, were impeached in the House, but the Senate voted not to convict either of them. Richard Nixon resigned after the House Judiciary Committee approved 3 articles of impeachment, but before the full House voted on them. Point three, the Constitution provides that a president can be impeached for, quote, treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. Now, treason and bribery are well understood, but the Constitution does not define high crimes and misdemeanors. The conduct does not need to be a crime. A president can be impeached for abusing the powers of the office or for acting in a manner that's considered incompatible with the office of the president. Point four, here's how it works. If the House Judiciary Committee approves articles of impeachment, then the full House votes, and a simple majority of those present is required to impeach. If the impeachment vote passes, members of the House are appointed to serve as prosecutors in the Senate trial. The Constitution requires that when a president has been impeached by the House, the Supreme Court Chief Justice presides over the Senate trial. The office holder is entitled to defense lawyers. Each side can offer evidence. And then a 2/3 vote is required for conviction. And if that happens, the president is immediately removed from office. If the Senate conducts a separate vote on whether to disqualify that person from ever again holding federal office, that requires a simple majority to pass. Point five, the Senate's vote is final. The Supreme Court has said that because the Constitution gives the Senate the sole power to try all impeachments, a conviction on impeachment cannot be appealed to any court. And in all of U.S. history, only 8 people have been convicted after Senate impeachment, and all of those were federal judges. And by the way, if the president is convicted by the Senate, he cannot pardon himself. The same constitutional provision that gives the president the power to, quote, grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States, then adds this phrase, except in cases of impeachment.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here, and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.